productivity. Setting up for the day. Setting up for the day. Okay. Now I can find the part that I'm going to work. And it's somewhere. Where is it? No, it's not that bit there. Oh. Ah, here we are. So we're going to sort this out. Okay. Okay. So project, check. Educate myself while I'm working, check.
Nowadays, there is a perpetual debate.
This is ancient Egypt and stargates. Always love a good doco.
That the ancient gods no longer exist. The majority applauds the phenomenal progress humans have made by eliminating such simplistic thinking.
Spectaculars, check.
Strange, close bond they seem to have cultivated.
Machine on, check.
In astrology, a much ridiculed practice, bygone divine images still seem to be recognized and cherished as sentinels of events. It should not surprise anyone who examines the practice objectively that mythological characters exist in every culture, and those human beings have esteemed and guided their lives.
That's where I'm going to start from, check.
Throughout the ages.
And away we go.
Scholars view Egyptian spirituality as a primitive sky religion based on an older, more primitive epoch. Ancient Egyptians considered cosmic life to exist harmoniously and synchronically with mortal life, only separated by the veil of materiality. There were no separate disciplines of astronomy and astrology as there are now, but they interacted with each other in a system that emphasized these intricately related
And off we go.
And it forms the premise of astrological thought. His experience with the ancient Egyptians was removed from the done at the dawn of time. Automatically attained by a person ascended from the earth to the heavens. 265. Ritual. The individual car could be integrated into the cosmic nature of the necessary and inevitable for all sentient beings. Even the gods lived a cyclic existence. Egypt's sacred astronomy explains this apparent contradiction, a part of all temple teachings. And all is the foundation of its religion, philosophy, and mythology. We know very little about Egypt's civilization without understanding the sacred astronomy. Astronomical phenomena, such as the movements and cycles of luminaries, planets, and stars, were visual manifestations of divine forces. In their risings, climaxes, and descents through the sky, resting stars. contrast to the changing limbs of the highest regions of the sky. Making them the immortal essence of things. The Egyptians, like ghosts, Egypt's geographical constellation, and the unique geography of the world to be responsible for its own existence. Because of this version, astronomical concepts became so ingrained and inseparable from everyday concerns that they became an integral part of the ensuring a similar seasonal cycle each year. Besides this, Egypt also enjoys a cloudless sky almost all the time and a location in latitude that allows even the most densely populated regions of the starry heavens to be viewed. Temple priests primarily practiced sacred astronomy. The priest's role was to assist the gods in their temples by translating their physical emanations, inherent in all celestial phenomena, into human terms. The appearance of stars, planets, and luminaries was observed, recorded, and interpreted as events that fit the temple's agenda of sacred rites and festivals. Timekeeping was an essential part of temple life between sunrise and sunset. The Nile's natural events showed day and night hours and seasons. In the Old Kingdom, there is a complex astronomical record-keeping system. During the different seasons of the year, lists of celestial bodies' appearance times were gathered for temple use. Besides keeping time on a cosmic scale, these records also represented the spiritual events related to celestial bodies and their appearances as the car of a netter. According to records, Egypt used 3 calendars during the dynastic period. They used observations of an annual Sophic cycle, the periodic motion of a star known by the Egyptians as sol.
La 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 Saracchia tiganisi, mesto maierio, e lo sasciuto faro, gatto pandretto.
Has initially been determined by level immediately after the solstice of 9 meters. Shafts of stone sunk into the water. This allowed the priesthood to predict how much water would be deposited on harvested land after the flood. Ancient Egyptians celebrated solar ceremonies like all ancient peoples. The rituals presented the passage of the sun from its northerly point at the summer solstice, symbolizing the quickening of life force, to its southerly point at the winter solstice, symbolizing the quiescence of vitality. Because the winter solstice signifies the end of the solar year and the renewal of the life force, festivals are celebrated around this time. Asar's magnificent temple at Busiris in Lower Egypt celebrated one of these festivals by raising the Djed pillar of Asar every year. Symbolically, the restoration of the netter's life followed a reenactment of an episode from the tremendous Assyrian myth, the contendings of Haru and Set. Records indicate it occurred on the 30th of Choyak, which coincided with the end of the Nile's inundation of the land. The festival begins on December 10 Rising of Orion
Saracchiati ganisi, resto maglierio, e lo tasciuto faro, tanto panzetto, e che ti frisati, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, urban.
The Deho and Set made peace after their struggle. The solar cosmogony, who assigned 5 epochal days, also known as the intercalary days, to mark the birth of the 5 terrestrial Neteru.
Oh, the Neteru.
Uru the Elder,
Well, Neteru.
Nepteh.
Lovely.
Tetra means the 3 seasons of the year.
Tetra means the 3 seasons of the year.
Planting and harvesting cycles determined
Planting
how long
and
the cycle
harvesting
lasted.
cycles.
There were 36 weeks comprising 10 days each. And
36
each was presided
weeks,
over
10
by one of
days
the
each.
36 deities. Every 30 days, a new month deity presided. A new decan appeared in the eastern sky at dusk every 10 days, marking the beginning of a new week. Our notations were also based on decans. Each day, the full cycle of stars passes over the Earth as it rotates on its axis. Each decan god represented a sixth of the sky. 36 times 10 equals 360 degrees. They appeared in the east, culminated overhead, and set in the west. The sun and moon were not considered separate celestial bodies. Instead, the sun and moon were as Huru Merti, or the 2 eyes of heaven. The sun was her right eye, the moon her left eye. Together they served as protective amulets that subdued evil forces. Other than those of the solar
I've run out of bobbin.
imperative since the new moon.
I was sitting there and I'm sewing and I've got no bobbin.
Afterward, food offerings were taken to tombs by the families of the dead or the funeral priests for the sustenance of the dead during a 6-day feast in the first quarter. Asar's dismemberment by Set, the principle of darkness, was associated with the period of the waning moon.
Right, some of you are learning sewing or relearning sewing, reviving your sewing skills. So, quick mini tutorial on bobbing and threading.
Because the darkened face of the moon represented Set's ascendancy over Asar. The activities of state celebrations and temples were suspended during these periods. From planting to harvesting, the lunar calendar also determined events in the agricultural calendar.
So,
lunar years were viewed as the organic cycle of celestial activity because of their apparent synchronization with the moon's phases and growth cycles. It culminated in the great offering ceremony performed at the end of the lunar year, which offered a substantial feast to the collective dead in thanks for their sustenance. Passover and Ramadan, both based on the lunar cycle, may have been closely related to the original intent of this festival because of their common lunar origin. Observing the sidereal cycle.
There's nothing
During
under
the
the
inundation,
sun.
certain celestial conditions were consistently
I'm
present
put it
each
on
year.
there.
The reappearance of certain
I'm going
stars
to
at specific
disengage the
points
machine
in the sky
by pushing it
has
over.
thus become a measure of the length of the year.
Give it a quick twirl.
For the Egyptians, the stars
Stop there.
determined every
Cut the
aspect
excess
of the royal
tail off.
celebration, from recording public events, lands and foreign lands, Sirius Alpha Canis Majoris, was unknown to Egyptologists as to why it was regarded as the most
See how it
sacred
is like
star
this?
in the Egyptian sky, were used to
like a
identify the
backward
beginning
pin.
of the celestial sphere.
Stick it in there.
Some scientists believe Sirius coincided
Bring
with the
it
spring
through underneath
equinox
there.
when Egyptian civilization began.
Stick that on
A
there.
celestial event that would have
Now,
occurred around 7,000
all your
BC.
machines have got
The
guides.
ancient
They've
Egyptians
got,
were
yeah,
aware
they've
of
got
the
little
star's
arrows.
binary nature
So
and
I'm going to
cyclic
go under
phenomena,
the thread guide.
as evidenced by their
Upper
knowledge of the
looper,
star's
down,
binary nature
following
from
it,
their
up,
knowledge of cyclic
bring my
phenomena
bottom
through
looper
knowledge
up,
of the star's nature.
through
The
there,
brightest
through the
star
guide,
on the
through the
ecliptic,
other guide.
Sirius, follows the constellation
Now is
Orion,
the fun
well
part.
known to the pyramid builders
Make sure
as a
my
sacred
thread
constellation.
is nice.
In the Sothic year, the star Sirius appears before dawn, just before the sun's corona engulfs the eastern horizon. It's heliacal,
I'm
with
there.
the
I'm going to
sun
wet the back
rising.
of that.
This once-a-year
It's
cosmic
easier.
event was the metaphorical union of
Tweezers, for
Sopdet
me,
and Ra,
tweezers. Some of
as
you don't have to
documented in
use
many
tweezers,
temple
I do.
inscriptions. Jehuti, the netter of sacred measures, was believed to have set the cycle in motion with the cosmic dawn,
Jehuti.
the beginning of the sacred year of the gods.
Aye.
An extra day is
And
added
there we
at the
go,
end
one
of 4
time,
years
and
of
it's done.
365.25 days.
Lift up the press
In the
the foot.
Gregorian calendar, this makes a leap year possible. Observing the annual
Line
heliacal
up where I'm
rising
gonna
of Sirius
stitch.
would have revealed this discrepancy to the
I'm
ancient
going to
Egyptians.
stitch.
4 years after the event occurred, the
Here.
solar calendar would show the event a day earlier. And after 1,460
La, 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 la,
years,
la,
the solar calendar would show
la,
the event
la, la,
progressing
la,
by a
la,
day throughout the
la,
entire
la,
year.
la, la,
Therefore, the
la,
Sothic
la,
cycle has an astronomical period. According to Censorinus,
because
the
this is
first
so
solar year,
big,
the first of
I'll make
Jehud,
sure I have to help
began
it through.
simultaneously with Sirius's heliacal rise in 139 BCE. The Sothic calendar was also established in 1322, 2782, and 4242 BCE. Duluth's the last date was the foundation of the Sothic calendar. Some astronomers who studied ancient Egyptian place the foundation even earlier in the Sothic calendar's history. The Sothic period there is a great deal of intricacy and sophistication in ancient Egypt. Time was linear and cyclical,
Okay.
a unique view of the ancient world. Also lunar, solar, and planetary time frames helps us grasp the physical existence and how it continues in other realms, as expressed in the great celestial rhythms of nature.
Oh,
The
lovely.
equinox's precession. Besides the axial,
Oh, the
which
equinoxes
measures
and the
day,
precession. Lovely.
which measures the minute.
We'll have
Precession.
2 equinoxes and 1 precession. Thank you very much. Yes to go.
Takes place in the slightly original position along the ecliptic. Drifting to the west between the constellations of the zodiac, there are 25,800 solar years in the great year, during which the equinox circumscribes the entire
There
zodiac.
you go.
The equinox moves through 12 constellations in approximately 2.150 years.
I'm going to have to
in
get
each
my son to
subcycle.
set me up
Hippocus,
YouTube Live.
190 to 120 BCE, the founder of Western observational astronomy, is credited with discovering the equinoctial precession. The
Snippy,
Egyptians,
snippy.
however, had more than enough evidence to prove their knowledge of the phenomenon.
Snippy, snippy.
Inscribed on the circular zodiac at the Dendera temple of Heter are changes in the equinox's position, suggesting that the Egyptians monitored the equinox and used it in sacred architecture.
Okay.
Despite the controversy arising from the mathematical symbolism of the Great Pyramid of Giza, precession numbers embedded in several measurements is significant. In iconography from this period, dual divinities predominate. Ancient Egypt was patronized by 2 archaic goddesses, Nekhebet the vulture in the south and Wadjet the snake in the north.
Oh, watch it.
As Pharaoh took their 2 ladies' name upon becoming king, vultures and cobras served as the guardians of the throne. After his reign, the sage having signifying the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolized the kingship's maintenance of these 2 regions.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
The thematic image of the sacred during the age of Mistress, between 18 to 2320 BC. Thus, a summer star Moreover, matrimony marriage was celebrated in the royal house to commemorate the Mistress. Aries represented the after the birth of adventures.
Needle
During
up
this
to
era,
highest
Assar
point.
became known
Lift
as
the
Hail
press
of
the
the
foot.
Two Plumes, a reference to the
snippings.
royal house's crown,
Hi,
composed of
Usha.
double-feathered horns that symbolised the newly dominant cerebral functions of the period.
All cerebral
Asar, the sacred
functions.
bull, overlapped
Doesn't
with
happen
Canaan,
very
the
often.
ram-headed god of Upper Egypt.
With some people.
Amon, the ram-headed god of Lower Egypt, became the patron god of the royal person. Libra, which governs sacred unions, came to represent the spiritual significance of consanguinity in royal marriages. It is depicted in temple inscriptions of that
Okay.
era that the royal lineage originated with to Amun, the divine father, such thematic changes. In including their symbolism and a talented architect of Hatshepsut, who was buried near the exquisite
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Bravo.
and Hether temple at Dendera, but they are
Dendera.
unique to those cities. During the dedication of the temples, the elliptical positions of
See,
stars
that's
and
coming
planets were
along.
depicted. The
You see
accuracy
that?
with which these celestial diagrams are rendered can be verified by computer analysis. In the famous round zodiac of Dendera, the only one of its kind discovered in Egypt, the planets are depicted at sunrise on April 17, 17 CE, besides sidereal representations of the Deccan gods at various places in the temple for 700 BCE. Zodiac also reveals other marvelous characteristics. As well as directions towards older vernal points, its markings show the spring equinox of the epoch of the temple's last dedication in 700 BCE, inscribed with the hieroglyph based on the civilization of the epoch of the temple's foundation in 66 Thus, the temple skyline astrological The oblong linear zodiac in Dendera A is in a side room known as the Silver Room. The circular zodiac on Dendera B is on the eastern roof of the temple. It covers the eastern and western halves of the western roof, known as the Chapel
advice.
of Asar. It is
When
also
you're
inscribed
stopping
on
the
the outer
machine,
hypostyle
take
hall
your foot
ceiling
away
on ground level
from the
as
pedal,
Dendera D.
just in case you accidentally
Dendera
press
E
it and then
is
next
also
thing you know
found
you've
in
thrown your
strips
hand.
of the exact location.
Okay.
The birth house of Oset is on the east wall, in the south corridor of Dendera
Lovely.
F. An illustration of Dendera B, the only circular zodiac in the Temple of Hether, appears on the preceding page. An inscription on the interior roof of the East Chapel, above the notable temple, is dated to the Ptolemaic period prior to 30 BCE. There are 12 Neteru, 8 in the image of Heru, and 4 of Hether,
Heru.
the divine pair of
Horus.
the temple, supporting the ceiling, one for each month of the tetramenes. 36 Deccan figures are depicted in the outermost circle of the zodiac. Kenmat is positioned
Line
beneath a
it
cow
up.
in a bark, equivalent
And
to
we're
the
ready to rock
constellation
and
of
roll.
Argo Navis, and is numbered clockwise. A pillar surmounted by a falcon marks is in Libra, Mars. Is placed between Aries and Pisces, a sign of the position of the equinox.
lovely.
Later reconstructions of the temple added intersections of the vernal point. On the relief, they are engraved at the constellations of Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, so that the vernal point of the temple's founding is in between the latter two.
I've got to go down this
At
street here.
10,500 BCE, Orion, which arose during the spring equinox, is illustrated by the hieroglyph for East. The exact beginning of the astrological ages cannot be determined with any precision in modern times. Astrologers disagree about the precise beginnings and endings of the astrological year. The practice of astrology dealt with the affairs of groups and governments, as well as natal genethliac astrology, which dealt with the destiny of individuals.
Genethliac, it comes from the
though
Greek.
in a much more original form. Rather than them listening to zodiac signs, sacramental astrology is used to planets. Everyone who wanted one. Many coffins have horoscopes and star charts
There
in them.
you go.
They frequently depicted a person's birth horoscope and served as a celestial guide through the heavenly regions. Horoscopes like these create
Hello,
accurate
sweetie.
maps of the sky for the nativity of a person. Computer-generated horoscopes for exact times will show consistently that Egyptian astrologers were adept at calculating planetary positions after comparing ancient records with astrological records. Greek influences are apparent in demotic horoscopes of the late period, such as the 12-sign zodiac. Sacred astronomy has very little surviving material on horoscopy, per se from the Greco-Roman period, when the horoscopes were called Ami Unnit, the record of wandering stars.
Oops.
Hermeticism echoes some of the original wisdom and supplements the astrological remains. Harari astrology from sunrise to noon. Kepri, the renewed sun, sunset, and the day was divided into 4 parts. As a result, astrology uses for practical purposes were limited to straightforward city. Egypt venerated the elements, the place of the sun contained the car of the sun and marked the location of the sacred mound. It was often built in the temple precinct, where the sun would pass through its zenith at a confident season sacred to the temple goddess. Following Benben, all subsequent obelisks were considered embodiments of Ra, and the temples where they were located were considered Ra's residence. According to the sacred astronomy, a netter's natural form is drawn from every celestial body's ka, spiritual essence. There is, however, a receptacle into which the immaterial force of the ka may be contained and then dispersed at times for the living. Consequently, in ancient Egypt, the sanctuary of each netter aligned harmoniously with the celestial body. Scientist who studied Egyptian monuments for a lifetime in the century. He translated detailed, complex surveys into evidence that all surviving sacred architecture had a deliberate association with celestial phenomena. An astronomical diagram appears on the upper inner surface of the coffin and shows the sky at the time of the birth of a man named Heter in the first half of October 93 CE. A Demotic inscription located elsewhere on the coffin shows Heter lived 31 years, 5 months and 25 days, dating his death to 125 CE. Heter's horoscope provides a wealth of astronomical data for the epoch, which was verified by computer analysis. Newt representing the celestial firmament is horizontally spread down the center of the horoscope, facing depicted the second Venus is located. The celestial boats of Canopus
this one's gone as well.
following constellations.
Okay, I've run out of thread again.
Meshtiu, Ursa Major, Sahu, Orinius, Ru Neteri, Leo Minor, Sark, Ursa Minor, and the 4 elemental Genii, Imset,
Hi.
Harpy, Damatef, and
Hi.
Kepsenu. The lower register depicts the hours.
Right.
The upper horizontal register of the horoscope shows the planets as Neteru on their celestial barks on the right side. Mercury, Saturn, Mars, and Venus as a phoenix are from top to bottom.
Oh, my assistant.
Jupiter, Sun as Horu, Mercury, Saturn, and Mars. The axis of the temple.
Gotta have an assistant.
For instance, is aligned with Alpha Centauri, the nearest binary star.
Alpha Centauri, I remember.
The 28th degree of Scorpio, which symbolizes the dual processes of decay and transformation in astrology. The temple has 2 sanctuaries dedicated to the crocodile Neteru Sobek, the principle of physical corruption, and the hawk Uru, spiritual ascension.
Ah,
According to Lockyer, the Temple of Cones, the Neter of the cyclic moon
that didn't last long, did it?
was aligned with Canopus, a star in Argo Navis' constellation. Kahi Nu was known to the Egyptians as the boat of Assar. A celestial boat is a form of the crescent moon, in which he is said to traverse the sky during his perpetual cycle of renewal. In temple architecture, we find other themes regarding the orientation of the sacred space, such as the diurnal transit of the sun. According to Lockyer, Egyptian temple orientations and equinoctial. The sun rises at the longest or shortest day in the summer solstice. Most temples in Upper Egypt were solstitial in a plan, orientated on their east-west axis to the sun when its declination is at its maximum north in summer or south in winter. Other monuments of a monumental type are so orientated. Sunrise or sunset light illuminates the interior of these monuments, often up to the sanctuary exactly. This phenomenon can be seen on the west Theban bank of the Nile in the famous Colossi of Memnon.
Oh, lovely.
Amenhotep III's seated
Amenhotep
face
III,
sunrise at the winter solstice, once flanking the
ancestor of
entrance to its Theban temple.
Tutankhamun,
The statues emitted
Amen
an eerie sound during their
dynasty,
moment, which is no longer
descended
audible because of erosion.
from Yuya,
Amun's magnificent
aka
temple at Karnak
Joseph.
faces
He has a
southwest
multicoloured
towards
coat,
sunset
the coat of
at
many
the summer
colours.
solstice, and northeast toward the sunrise in the winter. Temple of Amun-Ra,
I
built by
know,
Ramesses
not just a
II
pretty
on the
face,
southern border of
hey.
Egypt at Abu Simbel, has been
Abu
closely
Simbel.
examined in modern times. An international effort to conserve the temple was accomplished in the 1970s, and the temple was raised to higher ground. As in antiquity, it faces the rising sun at the winter solstice.
Oh,
The
lovely.
ancient Egyptians aligned specific great temple centers to
Ah.
pole stars and aligned to stars and the sun, and possibly other
Let's try
luminaries.
again.
Some have interpreted the alignment of the Great Pyramid's descending passageway as evidence that it was built as a celestial observatory.
I.
This misses the point that all ancient Egyptian monuments have a cosmic connection, often
Aye.
mentioned in reliefs on the temple walls. As illustrated by one of the ancient names for the monument, Tarkut Akhet, light of the horizon, the pyramid's alignment with the pole star speaks
Come
of
on,
an
get in
imperishable,
there.
permanent principle that the
Lovely.
monument represents. The
There,
primary
done.
focus of Lower Egypt's monuments, the north, is orientated to the North Pole, and our attention is drawn to the stellar-orientated cosmological theme, emphasized both architecturally and religiously.
Κράτα το χέρι μου και πάμε αστεριμός. Εμείς θα ζήσουμε κι ας είμαστε φτωχοί. Είναι πυκμένα και πέτρα και καημό.
The other supporting an esoteric tradition
La
observed.
la la
Many
la
Greek travelers mentioned
la la
this
la la
chiefly at
la.
Heliopolis and Memphis.
Και όταν ερχόταν η
Biography.
βράδια μες στα στενά σοκάκια σε φαντώναν τα παιδιά. Αυτό σπιτάκι μας κι αυτό είχε καρδιά. Κράτα το χέρι μου, πάμε αστέρι μου. Δεν έχουμε ζωή. Κράτα το χέρι μου και πάμε αστέρι μου. Εμείς θα ζήσουμε κι ας είμαστε φτωχοί.
An astrological calendar for the new
Astro from the
as
Greek
expressed in a phase
stars.
of human life and the solar cycle throughout the year.
Solar,
Each of the signs of
I
the
don't even know where
zodiac
that comes from.
represents a cosmic principle in action.
Oh, lovely.
This is exemplified
We
in both
love
the
a
marriage
cosmic
institution
principle.
in Libra
Yes, we do.
and the seasonally equal daylight and nighttime at the autumnal equinox,
Ah,
which traditionally marks the start of the sign. The Egyptians also recognized that each of the Neteru represents a
Neteru,
stage
the gods,
and human experience
to the gods.
that functions within the cycle of life. Later, the signs of the zodiac were associated with the Neteru to show
Neteru, Neteru. Κράτα το χέρι μου και πάμε αστέρι μου. Ένα χτισμένο και πέτρα και καημός. Και του σπίτι είναι ουρανός. Κι όταν γυρίζαμε το βράδυ απ' τη δουλειά, όνειρα γλυκά.
During the Gemini stage of the planting cycle, the shoot emerges and extends throughout the soil. Physical growth reaches its peak in Cancer, as does the maturation of the earthly form and the development of its inner subtle
Αυτό
forces. The
σπιτάκι
plant's
μας
design
κι
fulfills the
αυτό
development of its
είχε
leaves and the budding of what will become fruit.
Κράτα το
The use of force
χέρι
and will,
μου.
individuality emerges and is empowered. It is
Πάρ'
through
το
representing the
γέρα
collective to
σε
which one belongs.
πάνι μας. Πάρ' το γεράνι
As
μας.
illustrated by the Lion
Στην
King.
τραπεζόνα πια δεν έχουμε ζωή. Κράτα το χέρι μου και πάμε αστέρι μου. Εμείς θα ζήσουμε κι ας είμαστε φτωχοί.
Represents the union of the soul with its celestial counterpart.
Oh,
the cosmic
lovely.
union. Social participation also refers to entering the collective realm of experiences.
Oh,
Other forms of life can find nourishment from the remains of the plant. When the sap enters the earth for winter hibernation, Scorpio sets off on a journey. into
oh,
the inner
Scorpio,
world.
lovely.
The decay of plant matter before winter allows decomposition into latent life forms. As the outer form is darkest parts of the earth life goes into hibernation. Aquarius is the phase of in-plant life, perception of universality, which gives perfect judgment and a vision of perfect existence.
Oh,
After material existence has been renounced for spiritual existence, Capricorn gains control over the matter. The elevation is the redemption of the body from the dark winter and the glorification of the soul with the promise of new life. The winter thaw cleanses the soil and prepares it for a new growing season in this region. Teachers and temples perpetuate these spiritual endeavors. The soul's return to its source is a union with the spirit world. The seed is returned to the soil. The sojourner has access to the cosmic stream, and all possibilities are there for him to experience. Relationships between the stars. The Teru's association with the physical world was a necessity of their Hermetic teachings. The gods embody and represent natural forces inextricably linked to human life. In particular, the Neteru was thought to have three purposes in interacting with humans. This can be defined as a theurgic necessity. It is one function of the Neter to reveal its existence through vision or appearance. Neter's power is increased, and its realms of manifestation are enlarged. Neter's metaphysical necessity is also met. Manifesting through material means, the Neteru's powers increasingly relate to the physical world rather than separate. Natural life and Neter's existence are integrated continuously in this scenario. Neter's interaction with human life has a third purpose, poetic necessity. By imprinting and changing the material form with the power of the Neter, it elevates it. Observers may read or interpret the changed material form and use it for divination, prophecy, and healing as a byproduct of this phenomenon. Neter's imprint refines the matter that it embodies. Accordingly, each Neter attributes to these expressions of power holy days, animals, colours, scents, talismanic stones, and metals. A complete list of magical correspondences is enshrined in one vertical zodiac, the Dendera temple of Hetha. Each decade or 10-degree unit of the Egyptian zodiac